The warning light blinked red on the control panel. Captain Velix stared at it for a long moment, before touching the screen with one of his thin fingers. The message appeared in front of him, translated by the ship's computer into his language. It was a distress call. Someone was in trouble. Big trouble. Velix was the captain of a cargo ship called the Gentle Dawn. His ship carried supplies between planets. Nothing exciting, nothing dangerous. He and his crew were not rescue workers. They did not have the training or the equipment for that kind of work. But the rules of space were clear. If you heard a distress call, you had to help. Everyone knew that one day you might be the one calling for help. He read the message again. A colony ship called the Harbinger's Light had lost power near the Kronos belt. The engines were broken. Life support was failing. 23 people were on board and they were running out of air. Felix felt his hearts beat faster. 2 of them, actually. His species had 2 hearts, and right now both of them were pounding with worry. The Kronos belt was a bad place, very bad. It was full of asteroids, rocks flying through space at incredible speeds. Radiation storms happened there all the time. Ships that went into the belt usually came out damaged if they came out at all. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was where the belt was located. It sat right at the edge of human space. Humans. Just thinking about them made Velix nervous. Humanity had joined the Galactic Compact only 17 years ago. In that short time, they had become famous. Or maybe infamous was a better word. Everyone in the galaxy had heard stories about them. They came from a planet called Earth, and Earth was what scientists called a Class 12 death world. Most intelligent species came from nice, safe planets. Class 3 or Class 4 worlds where the weather was predictable, where dangerous animals were rare, where life was relatively easy. Earth was nothing like that. Earth was hell. The planet had massive storms that could destroy entire cities. It had animals that could kill with a single bite. The temperature changed wildly between seasons. Ice ages had covered the planet in frozen death. Volcanoes had buried whole regions in ash. Meteors had crashed into the surface, killing most life on the planet more than once. And somehow, humans had survived it all. Not only survived, but thrived. They had turned every threat into a tool. They had learned to predict the weather, hunt the predators, control fire and water and electricity. They had built cities and machines and eventually spaceships. They had clawed their way up from the bottom of the food chain to the top through pure stubbornness, and their bodies showed it. Human bones were incredibly dense and strong. Their muscles could generate enormous force. They healed from wounds that would kill most species. They could function with very little sleep. They could eat things that were toxic to other beings. Their immune systems fought off diseases that would wipe out entire populations of other species. Worst of all, they seemed to enjoy challenges. When things got hard, humans did not give up. They got stubborn. They got creative. They got dangerous. Felix had met a human once at a trading station. The human had been friendly enough, smiling and making jokes. But Felix had seen the way he moved, like a predator that was just pretending to be harmless. He had seen the scars on the human's hands, marks from a life of survival. It had been terrifying in a way Velix could not quite explain. But now people were dying. The Harbinger's Light needed help, and the only help close enough was in human territory. Velix took a deep breath and made his decision. He opened a communication channel and sent a message toward the Sol system, the home system of humanity. The message was simple. We need help. There is a ship in trouble near the Kronos belt. 23 people will die without rescue. Please respond. He sent the message and waited. Space communication was fast, but not instant. It would take time for the message to reach human space, time for them to read it, time for them to decide what to do. Felix ordered his crew to plot a course toward the distressed ship. They would get as close as they could, but he knew the Gentle Dawn could not go into the Kronos belt. The radiation alone would kill his crew within hours. All they could do was wait near the edge and hope someone else could do the actual rescue. 2 hours later, his communication system beeped. A message from human space. Felix opened it with shaking hands. The message was short and direct. We received your distress call. Help is coming. Stay where you are. We will arrive in 14 hours. 14 hours. Velix checked the status of the Harbinger's Light. According to their last transmission, they had maybe 20 hours of oxygen left. It would be very close. Too close. But at least someone was coming. The next 14 hours felt like a lifetime. Velix and his crew monitored the Harbinger's light from a distance, listening to their increasingly desperate transmissions. The oxygen levels kept dropping. The temperature inside the ship kept falling. People were getting weak, confused from lack of air, and then 13 hours and 46 minutes after the first message, something appeared on the scanner. A ship, dropping out of faster-than-light travel right at the edge of human space. Felix looked at the image on his screen and felt his blood run cold. The human ship was not what he expected. He had thought they would send a medical vessel, something soft and friendly-looking, painted white with red crosses. Instead, what came through looked like a weapon. The ship was called the Valor's Edge, according to the identification signal. It was covered in thick armor plates, scarred from previous battles with space debris and radiation. Sensor arrays stuck out from its hull like spines. Weapon ports were visible along its sides, ready to fire if needed. The whole thing looked like it had been built to survive the end of the world, which, Velix realized with a chill, was probably exactly what it had been built for. Humans came from a death world. Of course, their rescue ships would be built like warships. A voice came through the communication system. Female, calm, and professional. This is Commander Kate Sullivan of the Terran Rescue Corps, Valor's Edge. We have your location. Prepare to coordinate rescue operations. Velix cleared his throat and responded. This is Captain Velix of the Gentle Dawn. Commander, the distressed vessel is approximately 4,000 kilometers inside the asteroid belt. The radiation levels are extremely high. We cannot approach safely. There was a brief pause. Then Commander Sullivan spoke again, and Velix could hear something in her voice. Not quite amusement, but close. Understood, Captain. We will take it from here. Please maintain your current position and stand by for updates. The Valor's Edge did not slow down. It turned toward the Kronos belt and accelerated, heading straight into the maelstrom of rocks and radiation. Felix watched in horror as the human ship plunged into conditions that would tear his vessel apart in minutes. The asteroids were dense there, moving at incredible speeds. The radiation would cook anything living. It was suicide. But the humans kept going, flying faster and faster toward the dying ship. And Velix realized with absolute certainty that he had made a terrible mistake. He had called for help from Deathworlders, and now he was about to see exactly what that meant. Inside the Valor's Edge, Commander Kate Sullivan sat in her command chair and watched the tactical display. The screen showed the Kronos belt as a swirling mass of red and orange, representing thousands of asteroids and deadly radiation zones. It looked like flying into a storm made of rocks and poison. She had seen worse. Kate had been doing rescue operations for 8 years now. Before that, she had been in the military, flying combat missions in some of the most dangerous regions of space. She knew how to handle pressure. More importantly, she knew how to keep her crew calm when things got bad, and things were definitely about to get bad. Lieutenant Greg Matthews sat at the helm, his hands moving across the controls with smooth confidence. He was a good pilot, one of the best. Kate had flown with him for 3 years, and she trusted him completely. If anyone could navigate through the Kronos belt, it was Greg. Ensign Amy Carter monitored the sensors, watching for any threats that might come their way. Her job was to make sure nothing hit them by surprise. In an asteroid field, surprises usually meant death. Chief Engineer Paul Rodriguez was in the engine room making sure everything kept running no matter what happened. If the engines failed out here, they would drift until they starved or suffocated. No pressure. The ship shook as they entered the outer edge of the asteroid field. Small rocks pinged off the hull like rain on a metal roof. Kate listened to the sound and smiled slightly. The Valor's Edge had been built to take punishment. A few rocks were nothing. Commander, radiation levels are rising fast, Amy reported. We are already at 200% of what most species consider safe. Kate checked her own display. The numbers were high but not dangerous. Not for humans anyway. Humans could handle a lot of radiation before it became a serious problem. It was one of the advantages of coming from a planet that was constantly bombarded by cosmic rays and solar flares. Keep monitoring it, Kate said calmly. Adjust the shields to compensate. How long until we reach the distressed ship? 18 minutes at current speed, Greg answered without looking away from his controls. Good. Paul, how are the engines holding up? Running hot, but within limits, Paul's voice came through the intercom. "We can push harder if you need. Hold current speed. We need to be able to stop when we get there." A few of the crew members chuckled quietly. Kate allowed herself a small smile. Humor helped in situations like this. It kept people focused instead of scared. The ship rocked violently as a large asteroid passed close by, its gravity pulling at them. Greg corrected course immediately, his fingers dancing across the controls. Kate watched him work and felt grateful for his skill. Lesser pilots would have panicked. Greg just kept flying. She opened a channel to the gentle dawn. "Captain Velix, we are proceeding into the belt now. I recommend you pull back to a safer distance. If something goes wrong, we do not want you caught in it." Captain Velix's voice came through, sounding shocked. "Commander, your radiation exposure is already lethal by our standards. How are you still functioning?" Kate glanced at the radiation counter again. The numbers were definitely high, but her crew had proper shielding and medical treatments waiting for after the mission. They would be fine. Humans were tough that way. "We are built for this, Captain," she replied simply. "Trust me." There was a long silence on the other end. Then Velix spoke again, his voice quiet. "We will maintain position and monitor your progress. Good luck, Commander." "Thank you, Captain." The Valor's edge pushed deeper into the asteroid field. The rocks grew larger and more numerous. Navigation became a constant challenge, with Greg weaving between obstacles that could crush their ship like an empty can. The hull groaned under the stress, and warning lights started appearing on various consoles. But the crew kept working, calm and professional. This was what they trained for. This was what they were good at. "Commander, I have visual on the Harbinger's light," Amy announced. "Sending the coordinates to your display now." Kate looked at her screen and felt her stomach tighten. The colony ship was in terrible condition. Huge holes in the hull were venting atmosphere into space in thin, frozen streams. The ship was spinning slowly, caught in the gravity of several nearby asteroids. It looked like it might break apart at any moment. "Life signs?" Kate asked. 18 confirmed, Amy replied. 5 show no life signs, probably dead. The rest are clustered in the central habitation module. Oxygen levels are at 12% and dropping. 12%. That was dangerously low. At that level, people would be confused, weak, struggling to think clearly. They probably had less than an hour before they started dying. "Greg, get us alongside that ship." "Amy, alert the boarding team." "Paul, I want emergency life support ready to deploy the second we dock." Her crew responded immediately. Everyone knew their job and did it without hesitation. That was the thing about the Terran Rescue Corps. They only accepted the best. People who could stay calm when everything was falling apart around them. The Valor's edge moved carefully toward the damaged colony ship. Greg matched their spin perfectly, a feat of piloting that would have been impossible for most species. The two ships came together slowly, metal groaning as docking clamps extended and locked into place. Kate stood and headed for the airlock, pulling on her helmet as she walked. Behind her, Sergeant Danny West and Corporal Lisa Hayes fell into step, carrying emergency oxygen packs and medical supplies. They had done this dozens of times before. They knew the drill. The airlock cycled and the door opened onto a nightmare. The Harbinger's light was dying. Emergency lights cast everything in blood-red shadows. Debris floated through the corridors, bits of metal and plastic and frozen liquid. The air was so thin Kate could barely see her breath. The temperature was well below freezing. Her heads-up display showed 18 life signs ahead, clustered together in what remained of the habitation module. She moved forward quickly, her magnetic boots clanking against the deck with each step. Behind her, Danny and Lisa kept pace, their movements efficient and practiced. They navigated through the wreckage without slowing down, trusting their equipment and their training. Most species would have moved slowly through a damaged ship like this, checking every step, testing every handhold. But humans were different. Humans trusted their reflexes, their strength, their ability to react quickly to danger. They moved fast because every second counted, and because 18 people were running out of air. They reached the habitation module and found the door sealed. Kate checked her scanner. The oxygen level inside was at 8% now. They had minutes, not hours. Danny, override the lock. Lisa, get those oxygen packs ready. We are going to have some very confused survivors in a moment. Danny worked quickly, his tools making short work of the manual lock. The door slid open with a hiss, releasing what little air remained inside. Kate looked inside and saw 18 beings huddled together for warmth. They were different species, different shapes and sizes, but they all had the same look on their faces: exhaustion, fear, the desperate hope that help had finally arrived. Kate removed her helmet and spoke calmly. "My name is Commander Kate Sullivan. We are here to get you out. Stay calm and follow our instructions. You are going to be okay." One of the survivors, a being with pale blue skin and large frightened eyes, stared at her in shock. "You took off your helmet. The air is too thin. You will die." Kate smiled gently. "Humans can function in low oxygen environments for short periods. I will be fine. Now let us get you breathing properly again." Lisa moved through the group quickly, fitting each survivor with a portable oxygen mask. Almost immediately, color returned to their faces. Their breathing became easier. The fog of oxygen deprivation began to clear. "We need to move quickly," Kate continued. "This ship is not stable. We will guide you to our vessel. Stay close to us. If you feel faint, tell us immediately." The survivors nodded weakly. They were too tired and scared to argue. They just wanted to survive. Kate led them out into the corridor, her team forming a protective circle around the group. They moved back through the wreckage carefully but quickly. Behind them, a section of ceiling collapsed, missing them by only a few meters. The survivors flinched, but the humans did not even look back. They just kept moving forward, because that was what humans did. They kept going no matter what. One of the survivors found himself walking next to Sergeant Danny West. His name was Tyvex, and he was young for his species, barely into adulthood. He had signed up for the colony mission thinking it would be an adventure. Instead, he had nearly died in the cold darkness of space. He looked at the human beside him and could not help but stare. Danny moved through the damaged ship like he owned it. His steps confident, his movements precise. He did not seem scared at all, even though debris kept falling around them and the ship kept making horrible groaning sounds. "Are all humans like this?" Tyvex asked quietly, his voice muffled by the oxygen mask. Danny glanced at him. "Like what, Fearless? Like nothing can stop you?" Danny laughed softly. "We are not fearless. We are just stubborn, and we really hate leaving people behind. It goes against everything we believe in." Tyvex wanted to ask more questions, but they had reached the airlock. Commander Sullivan was ushering everyone through, making sure each person got safely onto the Valor's edge. She moved with calm efficiency, like she did this every day. Maybe she did. Tyvex had no idea. When the last survivor crossed over, Kate took one final look at the Harbinger's light. The ship was groaning louder now, its structure failing. In a few hours it would break apart completely, but the people who had been trapped inside were safe now. That was all that mattered. She stepped through the airlock and sealed it behind her. "Let us get out of here," she said to Greg over the intercom. "Roger that, Commander." Detaching now. The docking clamps released with a metallic clang and the Valor's edge pulled away from the dying colony ship. Greg navigated them back through the asteroid field with the same skill he had shown coming in, weaving between rocks and radiation storms like it was nothing. In the medical bay, the survivors were being examined and treated. Most of them had hypothermia from the cold. All of them had oxygen deprivation. A few had injuries from when the ship had first lost power, but they were alive, and they were going to stay that way. The human medical team worked quickly and efficiently. They seemed to know exactly what to do for each species, adjusting treatments for different biologies. Tyvex found himself impressed again. Humans had only been part of the galactic community for 17 years, but they had learned so much in that time. Or maybe they had just studied really hard before joining. That seemed like something humans would do. On the bridge, Kate opened a channel to Captain Velix. "Captain, we have successfully recovered all surviving crew members from the Harbinger's light. 18 individuals, all in stable condition. We will rendezvous with you in 30 minutes. Velix's voice came through, filled with amazement. "Commander, that was incredible. I have never seen a rescue operation executed so quickly. Your crew faced conditions that would have killed most species. How did you do it?" Kate smiled. "We do what we can, Captain. Humanity has always been good at surviving impossible situations. We just use that skill to help others now." There was a long silence on the other end. Then Velix spoke again, his voice soft. "Thank you, Commander. Thank you for showing us that Deathworlders can be heroes too." Kate felt warmth spread through her chest. That was the best compliment anyone could give. "We are happy to help, Captain. It is what we do." The Valor's Edge emerged from the Chronos Belt and made its way toward the gentle dawn. The two ships met in open space, far from the dangerous asteroid field. Captain Velix requested permission to come aboard, saying he wanted to thank the rescue team in person. Kate agreed, and soon Velix was being escorted to the bridge. He was a tall, thin being with pale green skin and large eyes. He moved carefully through the corridors of the Valor's Edge, looking around with obvious curiosity. Everything on the ship was built for durability. The walls were reinforced metal. The floors were non-slip surfaces designed to hold in any gravity. Even the lighting was harsh and bright, perfect for human eyes but probably uncomfortable for many other species. It was a ship built by survivors for survivors. And it showed. Velix reached the bridge and found Kate reviewing post-mission reports. She looked up and smiled. "Captain Velix, welcome aboard." Velix bowed in the traditional manner of his people. "Commander Sullivan, I wanted to express my gratitude. Your actions today saved 18 lives. The Galactic Compact will hear about this rescue. You and your crew deserve recognition." Kate nodded. "We appreciate that, Captain. But honestly, this is just what we do. Humanity may be new to the galaxy, but we have been rescuing each other for thousands of years on Earth. It is part of who we are." Velix looked at her thoughtfully. "I must admit something, Commander. When I first sent that distress call to human space, I was frightened. The stories we hear about your species are often about your strength in combat, your ability to thrive where others would die. I was not sure what to expect, and what do you think now?" Kate asked. Velix paused, choosing his words carefully. "I think the stories are true, but incomplete. Yes, humans are strong. Yes, you come from a world that would kill most of us. But today I saw something else. I saw a species that does not just survive, but helps others survive. You run toward danger instead of away from it. That is terrifying, Commander, but in the best way possible." Kate smiled warmly. "That might be the nicest thing anyone has ever said about humanity." "It is the truth," Velix replied. "You are Deathworlders, yes, but you are also something more. You are hope." Kate extended her hand and Velix took it carefully. The human grip was strong, much stronger than his own, but gentle too. It was the handshake of someone who knew their own strength and controlled it perfectly. As they stood there, the survivors from the Harbinger's light began emerging from the medical bay. They moved slowly, still weak from their ordeal, but alive. One by one, they approached the human crew members, expressing their gratitude in many different languages. Tyvex found Danny West again. The young alien looked up at the human sergeant with genuine admiration. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I do not know how you did it, but thank you for saving us." Danny's expression softened. "Just doing our job, kid. Glad you made it out okay." Tyvex looked at the scars on Danny's armor and the tired lines around his eyes. These humans were not invincible superheroes. They were just people who had learned to do impossible things because someone needed help. And somehow that made them even more impressive. One of the other survivors, an elderly female from a species Kate did not recognize, approached her. She was small and frail-looking, with delicate features and large, watery eyes. She looked up at Kate and spoke in heavily accented Standard Galactic. "I thought we were going to die," the old female said softly. "We had given up hope. And then you came, flying through that terrible place like it was nothing. How are you so brave?" Kate knelt down so she was at eye level with the small alien. "We are not braver than anyone else," she said gently. "We are just trained for this. And we believe that every life is worth saving, no matter how dangerous the rescue might be." The old female reached out with a trembling hand and touched Kate's arm. "You humans are special," she whispered. "The galaxy is lucky to have you." Kate felt her eyes sting with unexpected emotion. "Thank you," she replied. "That means a lot to us." As the survivors continued to express their gratitude, Kate looked around at her crew. They were tired, covered in dust and grime from the rescue. They would need medical treatment for radiation exposure. They would need rest, but they were smiling. Because 18 people who should have died were now going to live. And that made everything worth it. That was why humans did this work. Not for glory or recognition, though those were nice. They did it because they could. Because they had the skills and the strength and the stubborn refusal to give up that made rescue operations possible. They did it because someone had to. And if not humans, who came from a world that tried to kill them every day, then who? Captain Velix watched all of this from the side of the bridge, and something changed in his understanding of humanity. These were not monsters or warriors or anything to fear. They were just people who had learned to be strong because they had no choice, and they used that strength to help others. That was terrifying in its own way, but also beautiful. As the Valor's Edge prepared to escort the survivors to the nearest station, Valix made a decision. He would tell everyone he knew about what he had seen today. Not scary stories about dangerous Deathworlders, but the truth. Humans were heroes, and the galaxy needed to know. News of the rescue spread through the Galactic Compact faster than anyone expected. Within 3 days, every major news network was running the story. Captain Velix's report had been detailed and honest, describing exactly what he had witnessed. The galaxy learned about the impossible conditions in the Kronos belt. They learned about the radiation levels that would have killed most species in hours. They learned about the collapsing ship, the desperate survivors, the race against time. And they learned about how the humans had flown straight into all of it without hesitation. The reaction was mixed. Some species saw the report and felt their fears confirmed. Humans were reckless, willing to throw themselves into danger with little regard for safety. It was impressive, certainly, but also frightening. What else might they do without thinking about the consequences? But others saw something different. They saw a species that valued life, even the lives of complete strangers. They saw beings who had taken the harsh lessons learned on their deadly homeworld and turned them into something good, something helpful. And they realized that maybe the galaxy needed people like that. Within 2 weeks, the Terran Rescue Corps started receiving requests for help from all over known space. A mining station trapped by a solar flare, a research vessel lost in a nebula, a colony facing environmental collapse on a barely habitable moon. Every day brought new calls for assistance. The requests came faster than the humans could handle. The Valor's Edge was just one ship, and Commander Sullivan's crew could only be in one place at a time. They needed more ships, more crews, more resources. The human government responded quickly. They had seen this coming. They knew their people were good at rescue operations, and they knew the galaxy was dangerous. Within a month, construction began on 5 new rescue vessels. Within 3 months, recruitment for new crews was in full swing. Commander Kate Sullivan found herself promoted to Director of Operations for the entire Terran Rescue Corps. She now oversaw not just one ship, but an entire fleet. It was more responsibility than she had ever imagined, but she accepted it because the work mattered. Lives were at stake. That made everything else secondary. The interesting thing was that the recruitment for new crews was not limited to humans. Other species started applying too, wanting to learn from the humans, wanting to be part of something that saved lives instead of just making profits or conducting research. Tyvex was one of the first non-humans to apply. He had spent weeks recovering from his ordeal on the Harbinger's Light, and during that time he had thought a lot about what he wanted to do with his life. The answer had become clear. He wanted to help others the way the humans had helped him. His application was accepted, and he found himself training alongside human recruits. The training was harder than anything he had ever experienced. Physical conditioning that pushed his body to its limits, survival training in harsh environments, emergency medical procedures, navigation through dangerous regions of space. The humans seemed to handle it all easily, but Tyvex struggled. His species had not evolved on a death world. They were not built for this kind of punishment. But he refused to quit. Every time he wanted to give up, he remembered being trapped on that dying ship, remembered the feeling of the air growing thin, remembered thinking he was going to die, and he remembered Commander Sullivan's calm voice saying that everything would be okay. That memory kept him going. The human instructors noticed his determination. They started giving him extra help, teaching him techniques that would let him work around his physical limitations. They showed him how to use tools and technology to make up for what his body could not do naturally. And slowly, Tyvex improved. He would never be as strong or as resilient as a human, but he learned to be smart about how he worked. He learned to plan ahead, to prepare for problems before they happened, to use his mind instead of just his muscles. 6 months after beginning his training, Tyvex graduated and received his assignment. He would serve as a junior operations officer on a new rescue vessel called the Hope's Promise. The ship's commander was a human named Captain Helen Brooks, and her crew was a mix of humans and other species, all dedicated to saving lives. Meanwhile, back on Earth, construction of a major rescue station had begun in orbit around the planet. It would serve as the headquarters for the Terran Rescue Corps, a place where crews could rest and resupply between missions, where new recruits could train, where strategies could be developed for handling different types of emergencies. Director Sullivan oversaw the construction from her office on the partially completed station. She stood at the observation window looking down at Earth, the blue and green planet that had given birth to her species. It was beautiful from up here, peaceful and calm, but she knew the truth. Earth was anything but peaceful. It was a world of extremes, of deadly weather and dangerous animals, of constant challenges, and it had made humans into what they were: survivors, problem solvers, people who refused to quit. A voice interrupted her thoughts. Director Sullivan? She turned and smiled. Tyvek stood in the doorway wearing the uniform of a junior officer. He looked different from when she had first met him, stronger, more confident. The terrified young alien she had rescued had become someone else, someone capable. "Tyvek," she said warmly, "how are you settling into your new assignment?" "Very well, ma'am," he replied. "Though I must admit the work is more challenging than I expected." "Captain Brooks runs a tight ship," Kate laughed. "Helen is one of the best. You will learn a lot from her. I have seen your progress reports. You are doing excellent work." Tyvek looked pleased but also thoughtful. "May I ask you something, Director?" "Of course. Why do humans do this? Why risk your lives for people you do not know?" "I have been thinking about this question for months and I still do not fully understand." Kate looked back out at Earth. "That is a good question. I think the answer is simple, though. We do it because we have to, because we know what it is like to be on the edge of death, to feel helpless and scared. Every human knows that feeling because our planet taught it to us over and over again." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "And we learned that the only way to survive is to help each other. One person alone on Earth would die quickly, but groups of people working together, supporting each other, saving each other, they could survive anything. That lesson is burned into our culture. When we left Earth and went into space, we brought that lesson with us." Tyvek listened carefully, absorbing every word. "So you save others because you were saved yourselves," he said slowly. "Exactly," Kate replied. "Every human alive today is here because our ancestors helped each other survive. We owe it to them to keep that tradition going. And now that we are part of the galactic community, that tradition extends to everyone, not just other humans." Tyvek nodded slowly. "You know, when I first met you, I thought you were terrifying. The way you moved through that dying ship without fear. The way you seemed immune to dangers that would kill my species. I did not understand it. And now?" Kate asked. "Now I understand that you are still terrifying," Tyvek said with a small smile. "But in a good way. You are terrifying because you refuse to give up. Because you will do whatever it takes to save lives. Because you turn fear into action instead of paralysis. The galaxy needs that kind of terror." Kate smiled back. "That might be the best compliment I have ever received." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching as a new rescue vessel launched from Earth's surface. It was the Courage's call, the third ship to join the growing fleet. Soon there would be more, many more, because the galaxy was a dangerous place and people needed help, and humans, with their Deathworld strength and stubborn determination, were perfectly suited to provide that help. They had turned their greatest weakness, coming from a planet that tried to kill them, into their greatest strength, and they were using that strength to save everyone else. That was what made them truly terrifying. Not their strength or their resilience, but their absolute refusal to let others suffer when they could help. That was what made them heroes. 2 years passed. The Terran Rescue Corps grew from a single ship to a fleet of 20 vessels, each one crewed by humans and other species working together. They had saved thousands of lives in that time, responding to emergencies across the galaxy. The rescue station orbiting Earth was now fully operational, a massive structure that could house 500 personnel and service a dozen ships at once. It had training facilities, medical centers, repair bays, and command centers. It was the heart of humanity's contribution to galactic safety. Tyvek had been promoted to full operations officer and now served on the Hope's Promise as second in command under Captain Brooks. He had participated in over 30 rescue missions, each one teaching him something new about courage and determination. On this particular day, the Hope's Promise was on patrol near the Vermilion Expanse, a region known for unpredictable spatial anomalies. It was routine work, mostly checking on shipping lanes and responding to minor emergencies. Then the distress call came in. A luxury cruise liner called the Stellar Dream had been caught in a sudden gravity well, one of those spatial anomalies that appeared without warning. The ship was being pulled toward a dead star, and its engines were not strong enough to break free. 2,000 passengers and crew were on board, 2,000 lives at stake. Captain Brooks reviewed the data and frowned. This is bad. The gravity well is too strong for them to escape on their own, and it is pulling them toward an area with intense radiation. They have maybe 6 hours before the radiation becomes lethal. Tyvek studied the readings. Can we tow them out? He asked. Brooks shook her head. They are too massive. Even with our engines at full power, we could not pull them free. We need a different approach. The crew gathered around the tactical display, brainstorming solutions. It was one of the things Tyvek loved about working with humans. They never just accepted that a problem was impossible. They always looked for a way to solve it, no matter how crazy the solution might seem. What if we use our tractor beam to change their trajectory? Suggested Lieutenant Marcus Chen, the ship's engineer. We cannot pull them out directly, but maybe we can alter their course enough to slingshot them around the gravity well instead of into it. Brooks considered this. That is dangerous. We would have to get very close to the gravity well ourselves. If we get caught, we go down with them. Marcus nodded. I know, but I do not see another option. Do you? Brooks looked around at her crew. Every one of them knew the risks. Every one of them had signed up for this job knowing they might die doing it. And every one of them nodded, ready to try. All right, Brooks said. We go for it. Marcus prepped the tractor beam. Helm, plot us a course that gets us close enough to grab them without getting sucked in ourselves. Tyvek's coordinate with the Stellar Dream. Tell them what we are planning and make sure they are ready to boost their engines the moment we alter their course. Everyone moved at once. Falling into their roles with practiced efficiency, Tyvek opened a channel to the cruise liner and explained the plan to their captain, a nervous Kelthian named Draxel. You are going to do what? Draxel asked, his voice high with stress. That is insane. You will be destroyed. Tyvek smiled, remembering a similar conversation he had had 2 years ago, when he had been the one thinking the humans were crazy. Captain Draxel, I work with humans now. I have learned that what seems insane to us is just another day at work for them. Trust me, they know what they are doing. There was a long pause. Then Draxel spoke again, his voice steadier. Very well. We will follow your instructions. And thank you. Thank you for not abandoning us. We never abandon anyone. Tyvek replied firmly. That is not what we do. The Hope's Promise accelerated toward the gravity well, fighting against the pull that was dragging the cruise liner to its doom. The ship shook and groaned as they pushed closer, the stress on the hull increasing with every meter. Hull integrity at 80%, someone called out. Keep going. Brooks ordered calmly. 70%. Keep going. Tyvek felt his hearts pounding in his chest. He had learned a lot working with humans, but he still felt fear. The difference was that now he knew how to work through it instead of being paralyzed by it. In range, Marcus announced. Engaging tractor beam now. The Hope's Promise shuddered violently as the tractor beam locked onto the much larger cruise liner. The strain on their systems was immediate and severe. Warning lights flashed across every console. Hull integrity at 60%, the tactical officer reported. Hold it together, Brooks said. Marcus, begin the course correction. Slowly. We do not want to tear them apart. Marcus worked the controls with steady hands, gradually pulling the cruise liner off its deadly trajectory. The physics were delicate. Too much force and they would damage the Stellar Dream. Too little and the gravity well would win. 50% hull integrity. Come on, Brooks muttered. Come on. The seconds stretched into what felt like hours. The Hope's Promise groaned and shook, fighting against forces that wanted to tear it apart. But the crew held steady, each person doing their job despite the danger. And slowly, impossibly, the Stellar Dream began to change course. It is working, Tyvek called out. Their trajectory is shifting. Keep pulling, Brooks ordered. We need to get them to the slingshot point. 40% hull integrity. Critical damage in sections 4 and 7. Almost there, Marcus said through gritted teeth. Just a little more. And then suddenly the Stellar Dream reached the point where the gravity well would fling it away instead of pulling it in. The mathematics of orbital mechanics took over, and the cruise liner began accelerating away from danger. Now, Tyvex, Brooks shouted. Tell them to boost engines now. Tyvex opened the channel. Captain Draxel, boost your engines to maximum. You are free of the gravity well. The Stellar Dream's engines flared to life, pushing the massive ship away from the deadly anomaly. At the same time, Marcus released the tractor beam and the Hope's Promise shot backward away from danger. They had done it. 2,000 lives saved. The bridge crew erupted in cheers and relieved laughter. Even Captain Brooks allowed herself a smile. Good work, everyone. Marcus, damage report, hull integrity at 38%. We took a beating, but nothing that cannot be repaired. We will be fine. Tyvex looked around at his crewmates, human and non-human alike, and felt a surge of pride. They had just done something that should have been impossible. They had saved 2,000 lives by refusing to accept that the situation was hopeless. That was the human way. That was what he had learned. Never give up. Never stop fighting. Never leave anyone behind. Captain Draxel's voice came through the communication system, thick with emotion. Hope's Promise, we cannot thank you enough. You risked your lives for us. You are heroes, all of you. Brooks smiled. Just doing our job, Captain. Glad we could help. Do you need any medical assistance or supplies? No, we are intact. Thanks to you. The galaxy is lucky to have the Terran Rescue Corps. After the communication ended, Tyvex turned to Captain Brooks. That was incredible. I have never seen anything like that. Brooks shrugged. It was risky, but it worked. That is all that matters. You did well, by the way. Your coordination with the Stellar Dream was perfect. Thank you, ma'am. I learned from the best. As the Hope's Promise limped toward the nearest repair station, Tyvex thought about how much his life had changed. 2 years ago, he had been a terrified young alien waiting to die on a broken ship. Now he was part of something bigger, something that made a real difference in the galaxy. And it was all because humans had answered a distress call and refused to let anyone die on their watch. 5 years after the rescue of the Harbinger's Light, Director Kate Sullivan stood in the Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Compact headquarters. She wore her dress uniform, dark blue with silver trim, and felt oddly uncomfortable. She was used to working clothes and emergency gear, not fancy ceremonial outfits. But today was special. Today, the Galactic Compact was officially recognizing the Terran Rescue Corps for their service to the galaxy. It was an honor that came with responsibility. But Kate had always been good at handling responsibility. The assembly hall was enormous, with representatives from over 200 species gathered to witness the ceremony. Kate could see Captain Velix sitting in the front row, older now but still recognizable. Next to him sat some of the survivors from the Harbinger's Light, including the elderly female who had called humans special all those years ago. The Speaker of the Compact, a dignified being named Quellen, stood at the podium and addressed the assembly. 5 years ago, humanity introduced something new to our galaxy. Not weapons or technology, though they had both. They introduced a culture of rescue, a willingness to risk everything to save others. Quellen gestured to a holographic display that showed statistics. In these 5 years, the Terran Rescue Corps has responded to over 3,000 emergencies. They have saved more than 50,000 lives. They have established a standard of rescue operations that other species are now trying to match. The assembly hall filled with applause. Kate felt her cheeks flush. She was proud of what her people had accomplished. But she also knew it was not about glory. It was about the work, about the lives saved. But more than that, Quellen continued, humans have taught us something important. They have taught us that strength is not just about military might or economic power. Strength is also about the courage to help others, even when it is dangerous, especially when it is dangerous. The speaker turned to Kate. Director Sullivan, on behalf of the Galactic Compact, I present you with the Stellar Cross of Service, our highest civilian honor. You and your corps have earned the gratitude of the entire galaxy. Kate stepped forward and accepted the medal, a beautiful piece of crystalline material that caught the light and split it into rainbows. She looked out at the assembled representatives and spoke from the heart. Thank you for this honor. But I want to be clear about something. The Terran Rescue Corps is not just humans anymore. We have members from over 40 different species now, all working together to save lives. This medal belongs to all of them, human and non-human alike. She paused, looking for the right words. Humanity comes from a dangerous world. That is true. We evolved to survive impossible conditions, but we have learned that our strength means nothing if we only use it for ourselves. The real test of strength is using it to protect those who cannot protect themselves. More applause filled the hall. Kate stepped back, relieved to be done with the speech. She had never been comfortable with public speaking, but it was part of the job now. After the ceremony, Kate found herself surrounded by well-wishers and officials wanting to shake her hand. She smiled and nodded and said thank you dozens of times. Eventually, she managed to slip away to a quiet balcony overlooking the city below. She stood there for a moment, just breathing and thinking. 5 years, 50,000 lives, 20 rescue vessels with more being built, training programs that were teaching other species how to conduct emergency operations. It was more than she had ever dreamed possible. A familiar voice spoke behind her. Quite a view, is it not? Kate turned and smiled. Captain Velix, it's good to see you again. The old Calrithian joined her at the railing. I wanted to thank you personally, Director. Not just for the rescue 5 years ago, though that was miraculous, but for everything that came after. You changed the galaxy. You made it safer for all of us. Kate shook her head. We just did what needed to be done. Anyone would have done the same. Felix laughed softly. No, Director. That is where you are wrong. Before humans joined the Compact, rescue operations were rare and poorly executed. Most species would send help only if it was safe and convenient. The idea of risking your life for strangers was foreign to us. He looked out at the city. But you showed us a different way. You showed us that true civilization is measured not by how advanced your technology is, but by how you treat those in need. That lesson is spreading. Other species are forming their own rescue corps now, modeled after yours. Kate felt a warmth in her chest. That is wonderful. The more people willing to help, the safer everyone becomes. Exactly, Felix agreed. And it all started because you answered a distress call without hesitation. That moment changed everything. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Felix spoke again, his voice thoughtful. Do you know what I find most interesting about humans, Director? What is that? When I first learned about your species, I was terrified. Stories of Deathworlders, of beings who could survive anything, who were nearly impossible to kill. It sounded like a nightmare. But now, 5 years later, I realize that your greatest strength is not your physical resilience. It is your spirit, your absolute refusal to give up on anyone. Kate smiled. That spirit comes from our homeworld. Earth taught us that survival is a team effort. You cannot make it alone on a planet that dangerous. You need others and others need you. That lesson is burned into our culture at a fundamental level. And now you are teaching that lesson to the rest of the galaxy, Felix said. That is a beautiful thing, Director. Truly beautiful. Another voice interrupted them. Director Sullivan? Kate turned to see T-Vex approaching, now wearing the insignia of a full commander. He had continued to rise through the ranks, earning respect through his skill and dedication. He commanded his own rescue vessel now, the New Dawn, and had saved hundreds of lives himself. Commander T-Vex, Kate said warmly. Congratulations on your promotion. Thank you, ma'am. I wanted to tell you something. I received word today that my species, the Calrithians, are forming their own rescue service. They are calling it the T-Vex Initiative, named after me because I was the first non-human to join your corps. Kate felt her eyes sting with tears. T-Vex, that is wonderful. I am so proud of you. It would not have happened without you, T-Vex replied. You showed me what was possible. You taught me that being afraid is okay, but letting fear stop you from helping others is not. That lesson changed my life. Captain Velix smiled at his younger countryman. The boy I rescued 5 years ago has become a hero himself. That is fitting. The three of them stood together on the balcony, looking out at the city and thinking about everything that had changed. 5 years ago, humanity had been the scary newcomers, the Deathworlders that everyone whispered about with fear. Now they were heroes, not because they had conquered anyone or proven their strength in battle, but because they had used their strength to save others. They had turned their greatest weakness, coming from a deadly planet, into their greatest gift to the galaxy. Kate thought about all the rescue crews out there right now, human and non-human, responding to emergencies across the galaxy. She thought about the lives being saved, the families being reunited, the hope being restored, and she realized that this was what humanity was meant to do, not conquer the stars or dominate other species, but to be there when others needed help, to be the ones who ran toward danger instead of away from it, to be the impossible answer to the desperate prayer. That was the legacy of Earth. That was the gift of being a Deathworlder, not just the ability to survive, but the ability to help others survive too. A message came through Kate's communication device. Another distress call, this time from the Outer Rim. A mining colony was trapped by a cave-in. 23 people, mostly families. Kate looked at the message and smiled. Some things never changed. There would always be people in trouble. There would always be emergencies. But now there would also always be someone ready to help. She turned to T-Vex. "Commander, can the New Dawn respond?" "Already plotting the course, ma'am." "We will be there in 6 hours." "Good. Keep me updated." As Tyvex hurried off to prepare his ship, Valix looked at Kate with amusement. "You cannot stop working, can you?" Kate laughed. "Would you want me to?" "People need help. That is all the reason I need." Felix nodded. "No, I would not want you to stop. The galaxy needs people like you. People who care more about helping others than about their own safety. People who are terrifying in the best possible way." Kate smiled and looked up at the stars visible above the city. Somewhere out there, 23 people were waiting for rescue. They were scared, maybe hurt, possibly giving up hope. But help was coming. Human help, backed by the stubborn determination that only a death world could teach. Help that would not stop, would not quit, would not accept failure. Because that was what humans did. They answered the call. They ran toward danger. They saved lives, and they were terrifying at it. But in the best way possible, in the way that meant hope, in the way that meant survival, in the way that meant no one had to face the darkness alone, because humanity, the Deathworlders, the survivors of Earth, had learned the most important lesson of all. That strength meant nothing if you only used it for yourself. That true power came from lifting others up, that the measure of a civilization was not in what it could destroy, but in what it could save. And humanity would keep teaching that lesson, one